It's the Kina Wife Mom Boss podcast. All right, girl, we are having conversations about everything pertaining to being a wife, mom, boss in the kingdom. So, the things you need to hear, the things you're afraid to say, the things you think you are alone on, we are having those conversations right here. So, we enjoy having conversations with those women that are willing to come on and pour out into our community. Why don't you take a listen at this next clip from our next episode of the Kina Wife Mom Boss podcast? See you later.
And my dad is the reason why I'm an entrepreneur because even though I'm writing checks as big as $10,000, when it was time to pay me, he always gave me $80. I went to work for myself because at that young age, I was like, if my dad can't see my value, then nobody will.
Wow.
And from there, I started my first business when I was 19 years old, doing it part-time. And then God really shifted my life in so many ways. I've been hearing the voice of God since I was 8, but I wasn't brought up in church. But I was raised knowing who God is and the importance of building a relationship with God. So when I started my business, the one that I have now, I'm going to tell you, I heard the voice of God. Like, to be honest, I heard the voice of God. God had to remind me. And I came back the next day and said, demote me. And he said, all my years, nobody's asked for a demotion. I said, that's not my plan. And before I waste your time or my time, demote me, please. And he was so shocked. Everybody was. But I knew I wasn't going to be there. I knew that I was an entrepreneur. And what I wasn't going to do is waste my time or change my path.
For us to see, you know, do we really love each other?
She was a wise woman.
You don't know what you don't know, right? So once you're exposed to something new, you're like, wow, this is how it's supposed to.
I don't know what to do. He will, of course, cover me in prayer. I have done things my own way, very erroneous.
I mean, when I tell you endured,
It was just the overflow of every emotion.
The word widow, I completely despise.
Has tainted this area of sex so much.
Hey, Kingdom Wife Mom Boss, thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast. I am here with a special guest. I'm going to have her go ahead and introduce herself before we dive in.
Hello, everyone. I am Timera LaChae. I am the founder and CEO of Increase Marketing and Consulting, where we bring visions to reality through graphic design, brand strategy and development, business strategy and development, coaching and client representation, as well as Increase Nation United, where we focus on transforming the lives of those raising tomorrow.
Oh, I love the introduction. That is amazing. Where are you stationed at?
We are out of the state of Georgia.
Oh, are you? I'm not too far from you. I'm in Florida. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not too far from you. And you have kids?
Yes, I have 2 handsome sons, Christian and Demario.
Oh, I love that name, Demario.
Thank you. My junior.
Oh my goodness. So I have 2 and 2. I have 2 girls and 2 boys. My 2 boys are in the middle, and as you can imagine, they real middle-ish. They are such a mess, girl. Listen, I text one of them today because my youngest is 3, and she is a Velcro baby. She is always at my hip, and she didn't know I was home, so I was trying to keep it that way so I could work on something. And I text my youngest son, and I said, "Hey, I got a covert mission for you." And I said, "Are you in?" And he said, "Well, who is covert? And are they strong? Can I beat them up?" And I was like,
Oh my God.
girl, these kids keep me on my toes and keep me laughing. So children are such a blessing. They just keep us going. And so let's go ahead and dive into who you are and what you do and what your backstory is. What got you into marketing brand strategist?
Okay, so I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time. I've only worked for someone 9 months of my adulthood life. Growing up, my dad owned 7 businesses, dollar stores, cell phone companies, trucking companies, sound and production companies, and clubs. And so I started to do payroll for my dad when I was 15 years old. And my dad is the reason why I'm an entrepreneur because even though I'm writing checks as big as $10,000, When it was time to pay me, he always gave me $80. And I was a little confused because I was like, wait a minute, time out. What's up with this $80? And he would say, your expenses are already taken care of. Well, my parents were not married. My mother raised me. So I was like, I think he think I'm a little off or something. And so when I went off to college, I went on a basketball scholarship because I do stand. Well, when I played basketball, I stood at 6'3". I found out that something has happened because now I'm 6'1 and a half. I don't know. Okay. But I went off to college and I did not go to work for someone. I went to work for myself because at that young age, I was like, if my dad can't see my value, then nobody will.
Wow.
And from there, I started my first business when I was 19 years old, doing it part-time. I was doing what a lot of entrepreneurs do. I was inconsistent because I was like, as long as it pay my bills, that's all that matters. And then God really shifted my life in so many ways. I've been led by God all my life. I've been hearing the voice of God since I was 8, but I wasn't brought up in the church. And it kind of confuses people because when they see me, when they hear me, they're like, there's no way. But I was raised knowing who God is and the importance of building a relationship with God. And so I went off to college, graduated, came back home, started my first brick and mortar, right? And then I realized I'm not supposed to stay at home. So I left. And I went into corporate for 9 months. And then after that, I started what is now Increase Marketing and Consulting. And we've been in business 12 years now.
Wow, that is a powerful testimony. And my goodness, your dad did have a lot of businesses. And we ain't finna glaze over the fact that you played basketball in college. I like how you just glazed over that fact. Where did you where did you play basketball?
I played for D4 Valley State University. That's a
Okay.
story with God too, because I became captain my sophomore year. Now, I was the child that struggled with everything, but my mother said if you start something, you finish it. So it didn't matter if I got embarrassed, people laughed at me. Because I started it, I had to finish. And everybody was trying to get me to play basketball. Well, I didn't want to play basketball. I wanted to dance. I was like, I wanted to be girly, right? And then after I got in high school, I was like, okay, I'll do it. But I didn't know how to play. So, yeah, I didn't know how to play. The first time I shot a ball, it was in the wrong basket, all of that. And my senior year, everything came together and it clicked. And so I got recruited with Coach Lonnie Bartley. He went. And I was like, okay, I want to see what this was like. So sophomore year, the Spirit of the Lord came to me and was like, I want you to come up with a saying before the season started and come up with this saying you're going to say before every game. And y'all are going to go undefeated and win the SIC championship. And he was like, but Timera, I want you to tell your teammates this is going to happen before it happens. And I was like, huh? Wait, I can do a lot of things. Like through my journey, anytime God spoke to me, I always told my mom. That was it. And she would watch it come to pass, all these things. But this was pressure. Because you want me to tell my teammates that you said this. And eventually I did it. But I wasn't captain at the time. So I was like, nobody's going to listen to me. And like 2 weeks later, my teammates did something they have no business doing. We had to get up early in the morning to go in the locker room in the old gym. And he says, Timera is your new captain. And I'm like, what? And so I told them and they laughed at me. They were like, girl, go somewhere. You ain't gonna do that. And we got ready to play the #1 team in the conference, Kentucky State University. And my coach said, is there anything anybody want to say? Now, he never asked that question. And I was like, yeah, I want to say the saying God told me to say. And I said the saying, I said it every game. And we won every game. We went undefeated and won the SIC championship. There was a game that we were going to lose. Like we were down 10. The girls were just as tall as me, but I don't have as long, my arms are not that long. Everything that went up went out. I went in the locker room halftime and I said, God, you said that if I say the same before every game, we were going to go undefeated and win the SIC championship. But the thing with that is, I'm a sophomore talking to seniors and juniors, and I had to give instructions. You couldn't have sex, you couldn't drink, smoke, you couldn't do none of that stuff during the season. You can't skip curfew. So I'm telling these grown women this from different backgrounds, and I'm like, this is what God said. And all of them committed to doing it, though. Every last one of them. And I'm in a locker room and I said, God, we did what you said. Now you got to do this. That was the best game of my life. He gave me the eyes, the vision of a point guard. And we won that game. And my teammate, Shakaya, came up to me and was like, I know we won because of God. And in that moment, I realized that God had this happen so that he could get the glory. That was it. He just wanted the glory. And I was so amazed by it. Like girl, but I was scared because I was like, what happens if, but you're telling me to do this. But when he made me captain, I was like, I gotta do it. Yeah.
Girl, you got me over here with chill bumps, and I'm gonna tell you that is so amazing. Number one, let's break this down because we ain't go we can't escape this. But you said that you wasn't raised in the church, but you were raised to have a relationship with God, which I think number one is so important because my daughter is off to college, and she said, Mom, I gotta find a church. And I don't really know a whole lot of churches in the area that she is. And I had to remind her, or I just had to, I've had this conversation with her before. So, yes, remind her that the closest that I got to God was not in a church. It was in my bedroom floor, on the floor, praying to God. Like that was the closest that I was, the point where I was able to really get to the level of just having this intimacy with God. It was not in a church. And so I was just reminding her that. And I think that is so important because people think just because people don't go to church, they don't have a relationship with God or they don't know God. So stop judging what you don't know or what you don't understand. Congratulations, big ups. That also hit home with me because my mom passed away last year. But she always said that my oldest son, his game was basketball. He always played football. He never played basketball. The one year he tried out for basketball in middle school, he didn't make it. And I don't think it was because he couldn't play. I think it was because Bray had a bad attitude. We've been having to work on that attitude. And so this year I was finally able to get him back into some sports because he had to get his grades and stuff up. But we went to his practice and I was like, oh, he's actually pretty decent at basketball. And so that was encouraging to know that you didn't even start playing until high school because this is his story, this is his story right now. And I'm curious to see where God takes him in that because he actually really loves the sport of basketball even more so than he loves football. But for however many years he just played football, I think that's just because all his friends played. So, and God was dealing with me a couple of weeks ago about giving him the glory in everything.
Yeah.
Because I think that we have these conversations and we be like, oh, I did this and I did that. Not intentionally trying to take God's glory, but sometimes we don't attribute the things, the blessings, the open doors, the favor that we have, we don't attribute it to it being, glorifying God in it. And so I think that is so amazing that in your mind you were like, okay, I have to give God glory for this. Like I have to just trusting what he said in those moments to speak and decree his word. And then whenever it looked like his word wasn't coming to pass, you said you went in the locker room and you reminded him, God, this is what you said. You recall his word unto him, and it causes him to not remember like he forgot, but it causes him to step up in what he said that he was going to do and execute that word. I love how God pulls our faith out of us in those moments where we can just be like, we can go to him and be like, God, I have faith in what you said you were going to do, and I know that you're going to do it, so I'm just going to decree this word again, and I'm going to go out there and do what I got to do. Baby, that's the story. You got a book on it?
I'm writing the book, actually.
Oh,
I'm writing the book, and it took years. I finally said, you know what? I'm gonna write this book. I need to write this book. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love your story. We ain't even got into the business yet, girl, but I'm loving the story from the childhood on. And she said, if my dad was not gonna see my worth, no one was. And so you got out and you created your own business. I really want to know what that was like in the beginning stages because you're fresh out of college, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I started my first one while I was playing basketball, but I was wise enough to partner with my mother. My mother has been in sales over 30 some years, right? So I am fortunate to have parents that I listen to. So I gained a lot of wisdom from them. But even though I gained wisdom, I wasn't doing everything. So I still had my setbacks, So when I started my business, the one that I have now, I'm going to tell you, I heard the voice of God. Like, to be honest, I heard the voice of God. God had to remind me. Because when I went into corporate America, because I am kind of competitive, So I went in corporate America. I went in an industry that I didn't go to school for, right? And a lot of the people that work in the industry that I was in, they're either like 40 and up, and they're Caucasians, right? So it wasn't a lot of Black people. But I walked in and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be y'all manager after my 90-day training. And they were like, you crazy. Like, some of us been here 20 years. What are you talking about? And I was like, nah, I'm gonna be your manager in like 90 days. And I know I really stepped on some toes, because
Yeah,
like I
you
talk to
did.
people. But in my mind, I'm like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna excel in it. That's just my mindset. And so,
You was a whole Joseph, weren't you?
oh, listen, really, like, and so the 91st day, Chad Johnson pulled me to the back and said, in the morning, no, the 90th day, in the morning, you're going to be their manager. So the 91st day, I was their manager, right?
Wow.
Yeah, 91st day. And he said, because of your credentials, you qualify, right? Cool. So I'm working it. I'm loving it, all this stuff. Now, I've always had that entrepreneurship mindset. I do not recommend people do this. And my mindset was, you need me more than I need you. So I'm going to do my job, but I don't work holidays, right? So there was a lot of like, who does she think she is? And it wasn't that I thought I was better than anybody. It was like, I've always had that entrepreneurship spirit where it was like, I don't want to work on holidays. So I didn't show up. And my mindset was, you need me more than I need you. I'm doing my job, right? And it was, yeah, it was some backlash there, because it was like, who do you think? Well, I told you I wasn't coming. You thought I was playing, right? And I don't recommend people do that. I don't. But I do believe that God has given me dominion and authority over my life. I do believe that. And I do believe that we have to understand that everybody's not fit to be in a box. Okay. And that showed me that, like, I can't do this whole you tell me when to come to work thing. I can't do that, because I don't want to work holidays. Like, so I'm being real. So while I'm at work in corporate, I'm structuring my business. I can't get it off of my mind. So when I'm in between breaks, all of that, all I'm doing is writing down my plan, all these things, right? I can't shake it, any of these things. And I remember one day I came in, we had a meeting, and he was like, we're preparing you for your own store. And I said, you're doing what? And he said, we're training you to run your own store in North Carolina. And I went home and I was like, no, that's not my plan. And I came back the next day and said, demote me. And he said, all my years, nobody's asked for a demotion. I said, that's not my plan. And before I waste your time or my time, demote me, please. And he was so shocked. Everybody was. But I knew I wasn't going to be there. I knew that I was an entrepreneur, and what I wasn't going to do is waste my time or change my path. I couldn't do that, because on the end where my dad's working all these businesses, my mom worked a job, retail. And I watched my mom do that. My mom didn't go on vacation until probably 5 years ago. Yeah, like, we didn't go anywhere. My mom worked, okay? And I was like, that's not me. That's not me. My mom made sure there was a roof over our head. She took care of us. She worked very hard. But she couldn't do anything because she was in retail. So there was no weekends off, none of that. I was like, no, that will never be me. But I never said it would never be me. I just said what would be me. I'm not working weekends. Like, I'm going to be off on weekends. I'm going to do this. And so I could not allow someone to box me in, because I've already seen it. And I didn't want to experience it again.
So let me ask you a question. Do you feel like, because we're going back to what you said with your dad, you feel like your dad didn't value as far as like what he was paying you for you to do the work. Did you feel like that moment or that experience kind of shifted your mindset on saying, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do? Like,
Yes, definitely.
you had to find your own value there.
Yes, Definitely because I never seen my dad work. So my dad has always had employees. So I used to call my dad lazy. Like, you lazy, you don't do nothing. You just tell people what to do, and then you pay me $80. Like, I don't understand. So
She
I
was
never
hot
seen
about
him
that
work.
$80.
Yeah, I'm like $80 every time. But I never seen him work. The only thing I see my dad do is do what he loved to do. And he's a DJ. That's his passion. So that's what he do. But I've never seen my dad work though. So I knew that's what, if I had to pick, that's why I always thank God that my parents were never married, because I got to see two different lifestyles and make a decision of who I wanted to be. But I would have never had that opportunity if I would have never seen both.
I love that. So talk to me about you said that you were structuring your business in between your breaks or whatever, and you went and you asked them to demote you. At what point did you know that you had to walk away from your job and like start the business that you were working on?
So I knew I was leaving. When I got asked for the demotion, I knew I was leaving. Like, I knew. So it had to be, I probably left like 3 months later, right? I started my business out of my apartment on the computer. I built my business on Facebook. Okay.
And that's the business that we're talking about now.
That's
This
the
is
business we're
okay.
talking about right now. I built it on Facebook. I was talking to people in their DMs like, do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this? I got the no's. My definition of no is not a negative word. Okay. But I get that from my mom because she's in sales. So no is not a negative word to me. No is a positive word. So how many no's can I get today? Because a lot of people look at the word no and they say, oh, it crushes you because it doesn't feel good. How I look at no is somebody else know who I am.
Yeah, all right.
That's how I look at it. So if you didn't tell
Mindset.
me no, that means I couldn't introduce myself. So I looked at it as a positive. So if I get a lot of no's, then the more people know who I am, and eventually they're going to say yes. Because eventually they're going to realize I need her on my team. So that's how it started. And I actually did it part-time, and I was able to take care of myself part-time. I did part-time until 2022.
So getting into your business, you did it part-time. What exactly were you doing in your business at that moment?
So I was doing graphic design, right?
Okay.
I was doing graphic design, but I told you I'm a little competitive, right? So my mindset was, how fast can I get it done? I had got so good that I could do a design in 15 minutes
Wow.
because I would time myself like, I gotta go faster, I gotta faster. Because the faster I go, the more money I can make.
Okay. All
So
right.
that was the mindset that I had. Okay, I got to do it faster, get it done faster, get it done faster. And so I was able to do it, but I never did it full time, like until 2022. 2022, because I started a business in 2015. So
Okay.
2022 is when I was like, okay, it's time to go full time.
So for 7 years, you had just this business, or did you have other
Just-
business? So
just-
you was just part-time in this business
I,
just to survive it.
I did that. And then 2018, I was married at the time. 2018, my husband at the time, he was like, you need to get into the insurance industry. Like, I've always been to myself, right? But I've always had several gifts and all of that, right? So he was like, you're gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. No, I'm not. And so I go to the meeting, and the person that recruited me was like, she can't do this. Like, because I get to myself, I observe the room, and then I open up. And so she was like, you got to be kidding me. When I went, I ended up going to an event right after I got recruited. And I went and I ran. I ran and I recruited over 100 and some people in 6 months. I was in my third trimester when I joined. By the time the 6 month was up, I was running for the one of the highest levels. Like I ran and I learned so much from my mom. My closing ratio is very strong. Okay. It's very strong. And I took off with that. But I was still doing my business. I didn't give up my business, but I took off with that. I took off with that. So that changed my life too, because it opened up my mind. It allowed my mom to start traveling. Because my mom left the industry that she was in and partnered with me. And she was able to travel, go on cruises, go to the mountains, all those things. And it was just a beautiful experience. And that's when I was like, I got to keep doing this for my business. If I could do it for somebody else, I can do it for me.
That's a blessing that you were able to pull your mom out of that space and see her do the things that you had never, saw her do. And so, when did you stop the insurance?
So I had my youngest son, Christian. I had him in 2021. 2021. So I had him, and there was some misunderstanding. And I just realized during that time, my husband at the time, he had a dream to start a funeral home. So I helped him start the funeral home. Well, you can't be with certain companies and be with
That
other
makes sense.
companies and all this kind of stuff. So we started the funeral home. That was his passion. We ended up doing that. And that's what caused me to leave. And I was working with the insurance company that was actually representing the funeral home.
Okay. So just a little bit. First of all, that is an amazing story or journey of how you graduated college and started your own business. And you said you were doing it part time until 2022, which we'll dive into 2022. It shifted you into full time. But you did the insurance. So you have a lot of experience under your belt as far as networking and sales and entrepreneurship, which you said a lot of that came from your parents. And that is a blessing. That was something that your parents were able to pass on to you. I always say that some of the most amazing inheritances that we get is the wisdom and the experience that we learn from our parents. Even while we're alive, we can use that, but that's also something that we can pass on to our children. So I think that is absolutely amazing. So in 2022, what shifted you to where you were like, I gotta go full time?
Oh, girl. Ooh. Okay, so I know I got a lot.
I love it. Let's
Okay,
go.
so 2022, number one, I went into 2022 and the Lord spoke to me, right? The Lord said, you need to do something different. And I was like, okay, okay. And the Lord said, you have a lot of wisdom, but you're not that wise. Because, yeah.
Don't God he do the most pearl snatching moments, and you
Yeah,
just be like, oh, but it's out of love.
right. He was like, you're not that wise because if you were, you would be further than where you are. And I was like, oh my God. Right. Okay. So for my birthday that year, which is in March, I said, I'm going to invest in 5 millionaires. I'm going to invest in 5 millionaire coaching sessions, touching every aspect of my life. Okay. So I did that. I was in the classes, and one thing got my attention out of everything. I noticed that all of them worked out. That was the light bulb. Boom. They all work out. So I decided once that light bulb went off, I got in my car. I didn't even wait. I got in my car and went and joined the gym. The next morning, I was up at 5. I was up at 4:30 in the morning to be at the gym at 5. I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. I needed a coach because I played sports. It didn't matter how good we were. Without our coach, we would have to forfeit the game. So that's my same mindset with business and anything else. A lot of people try to play the game of business, entrepreneurship without coaches. But if you look at sports, you can't play a game without without a coach. So it's the same thing with everything else. So I started taking the classes. The Lord spoke to me, and we're finna shift, okay? We're gonna go ahead and shift. The Lord told me April of 2022, your assignment with your husband is up. Now, when I married my husband, it was an assignment. I was a virgin until I was 28 years old.
Oh, I love that.
28. And I wasn't in church. Like I told you, I wasn't in church. I love God, right? So I would speak, though. I've been speaking in churches since I was 18, by the way. And every time I spoke, people would be like, who's your pastor? And I'll say, I don't have a pastor. Like, why you didn't ask me this before you had experience, And they'll say, well, you need a covering. And I would say, the blood of Jesus covers me. They'll say, no, 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 you need a covering, like a person. And during that time, I would say, oh, that's my grandma. That's my grandma. And this is 18-year-old Timera, right? They'll say, no, you need a person, a pastor. And I would say, but what happens if they get jealous of me? And they'll say, that's not how this works. And I would say, well, I know my grandmother would never be jealous of me. She gonna always love me. So that's my covering. So you gotta realize I wasn't brought up in the church, and they'll say, you got a lot to learn. Okay. So when I turned 24, I joined my first church because every summer I did a tour where I sung, did praise and worship, and did all that kind of stuff. Let God use me. God told me to do it. And
Pause.
okay.
Pause. Pause.
Okay.
A tour where you sung and did worship. Are you a worship singer?
So I was a praise and worship leader for years.
Okay.
Until I started pastoring.
Okay.
Okay. Now I don't pastor
You
anymore.
left this little detail out. So you sang.
Yes, I do. You know, I'm a worshiper all day. I love, oh man, I love it. Love it. But
Okay.
when I was on the tour, I would do songs that God had given me, right? And so I did that every year. My summer was dedicated to doing what God called me to do. Even when I was in school, every summer went to God, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And that's what I did. Every single summer.
Okay.
Not in the church, but I love me some God, right?
Okay. Okay.
And I would always share my testimony. You know, I was a virgin waiting. I would always share that to encourage other young people, like you can defeat peer pressure, all these things. And so I remember the Lord told me that this was when I was 20 years old. I was doing a tour in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, right? So I was doing a tour, and the Lord said, I'm sending you to the lost. And I was like, okay, you sending me to the streets. I ain't from the streets. You know, like, wait. And the Lord said, no, I'm taking you into the church. And I was like, I'm confused. I thought the church was full of saved people. And God said, no, I need you to go get my people like that. And I didn't understand that at 20. Okay. So when I joined my first church at 24, I played college basketball with a coach that the first college game I played was in Alaska. I'm a freshman and we're losing. And we go into the locker room and he comes to my face, nose to nose. I don't come from a household where my parents curse. Okay. Nose to nose. And he's cursing me out. And I turn and he snatches my face and turn it back and say, don't ever look away from me when I'm talking to you. Okay. Yeah. And that was every game we lost. And I didn't understand that. Okay. But I'm so grateful for it because it allowed when life happens, I can take it. Okay. Now I'm at this church. I got to this church on my tour. And I was like, she's so classy. And because I still had that basketball swag. And I was like, oh, she's so classy. And she loved God. And I kind of want to be, I told you, girly is it for me, prissy. I was like, I want that. I'm going to join her church. She tells me, you got to cancel the rest of your tour. And I said, you want me to disobey God? And she says, no, it's protocol. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm your pastor now. God is going to speak to me concerning you. I need you to cancel the rest of your tour. And I said, oh, I can't do that. I knew God before I knew you.
What? Girl, because did you see my face?
I was confused. And she said, you got a lot to learn. I said, I hear that a lot, you know. And she was like, God called me to teach you leadership. And I said, no, that's what my master's program for. See, even though, you know, I was young, I feel, you know how they say children speak the truth? I think I still had that childlike, like, I'm just going to blurt out my mouth, whatever, you know, and it might hurt you just a little bit. And so I was like, no, I can't disobey God. So we kind of bumped heads, right? And I was like, wow, why are you trying to control me? I'm confused. So I felt the spirit of control and I was confused. So then I joined another church. And then the Lord told me I was going to be there temporarily. Okay. Before I even joined, I was going to be there temporarily. But when I got ready to leave, I was getting prophecies to stay, prophecies that God's going to use you mightily at this place, all this stuff. But the thing is, I've been hearing God's voice since I was 8. So it was like, yeah, something's not right. So when I left that church, my name was scandalized. And then I wasn't a part of the church, okay? And God took me on a journey while I was in corporate where I was praying for people with stage 4 cancer. It started with one person, and from there it went from another person to another person to another person, and people were just calling on me, and I was like, God, what is going on? But God was speaking to me, through me, all these things, giving me revelation. But so many people were looking at my youth, my age, and because one of my best friends is like 68, so she would go with me. And they would think it will be her that's praying. And she'll say, no, it's her. And they're like, what? You know? So I experienced that. So then I was getting ready to do a tour, women conference. And a young man got in my DM and he was like, I want you to bring your conference to our church. I was like, okay, cool. I can do that. He said, call me. So, of course, I was busy, overlooked it, all of that. During this time, I wasn't in a relationship because I had just got out of a 2.5-year relationship where I thought we were probably going to get married. I said, you know what? I don't want to do relationship anymore. So I called him. He says, God has brought me my wife. I said, who? And he said, you. I
She
said,
said, "Who?"
I said, you can't be talking about me. He said, yes, God has answered my prayers. I thought the man was crazy. I was like, okay. And so kept talking, and then we started praying in the morning at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. we started doing prayer. And then eventually we met. I had already had a tour plan. So he ended up getting on the tour with me. He's an apostle. He was an apostle. Getting on the tour with me. We're on the tour. We're preaching the gospel, right? Now you got to realize I'm preaching the gospel, but I ain't no pastor. I ain't no prophet. I ain't nothing. All I did was God spoke to me, and I did exactly what God told me to do, and the doors opened. That's it.
Mhm.
So we're preaching, and everybody's calling us husband and wife. And I'm like, I don't even like him like that. What? That's not my husband. So then people kept prophesying. Now, during this process, God would speak to me over the years and say, I'm going to give you a Hosea and Gomar experience. I did not understand that because I was like, I'm not Gomar. So I didn't understand it. I was like, what do you mean you're going to give me a Hosea and Gomar experience? Like, why would you do that? I'm a virgin. And God said, remember I told you I'm taking you to the lost. I wasn't feeling it. So I was not in agreement. I was like, I don't want a pastor. I don't want to be married to a pastor. I don't want nothing to do with that. I just want to do what God's called me to do. Okay.
But that was what he was calling you to do, ma'am.
Right. So I'm in the
Go ahead.
I'm in the church. All this happened. I left the state of Georgia to try to get away from this prophecy. That's
Girl,
how
you right.
I did. I was
All
like,
right, Jonah.
I did. And it was crazy because I was like, I'm done with this. I don't want nothing to do with this. I get to Florida because that's where a lot of my family is, by the way. I get to Florida and everybody's calling me, can you come to my house and do a Bible study? I'm like, y'all, I'm actually leaving this. I'm trying to get out of it. And long story short, right? We ended up getting married, by the way. Ended up getting married. I have a story, by the way. I do. Ended up getting married. I had a right-hand man. This person, when I preached, she was right by my side. She met my whole family, all of that. So while I'm pregnant with my son, people are like, you're having twins. And I'm like, no, I've already seen my children. I don't know where these twins coming from. Well, she was pregnant too. And we were pregnant by the same man. Yeah. Pregnant by the same man. Yes. So, yeah, girl. Yeah.
What year was this?
This was 2018. 2018. All right. This is 18 we talking about. So I was like, I don't understand, y'all. Now you got to realize during this process, I got leaders in my ear telling me that I'm the problem.
Okay, wait. Tamara, it's a lot of process. Hold on. Hold on, Tamara. It's a lot of process because we got to break a couple of these things down.
Okay.
Number one, witchcraft in the church because the lady tried to control you. Sorry, that's what it is. It's witchcraft. It's witchcraft in the church. Such a common misconception of church people got it all together because they don't. We incredibly lost. And so I'm glad that you had the discernment to know that you had to put God's, instruction before hers. It reminds me of the part in the Bible where God told the prophet not to go to anyone's house or sup with anyone. And then the older prophet came to him and said, hey, God told me for you that this is what you're supposed to do. And God ended up, killing the younger prophet because he wasn't obedient to what his instruction was. So thank God for your discernment in that area. Man.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, something that I really want to highlight there is just people think that they have to have like certain titles or platforms to do what God is telling them to do or speak what God is telling them to speak. And God is opening doors like in the areas that He has called for them to. So I think that is so much encouragement for anybody who knows that God is nudging them or telling them to go and speak the gospel or to minister to other people or to glorify Him in certain areas and situations. You don't have to have a platform. You don't have to have a title. You just have to say yes and be obedient to what it is that God is calling for you to do. Let's get on Hosea. All right, so I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run it like that.
Oh, no,
Let's get
you
on
good.
this Hosea.
I
Let's
told you.
get on this
I like,
Hosea spirit.
hmm?
You said we gonna have to, my goodness, is this gonna be a part two? We have to meet up again and talk about the actual business because I feel like right now we're just talking about the glory of God in your life and the things that you've experienced. But anyways, you said that you and your right hand man was pregnant by the same man.
By the same.
Betrayal. I can't even imagine the knife that you
Mm.
felt in your back concerning the situation. And your kids are about the same. Okay, so let's go on with this story. Keep on.
I was hurt. That was the first time where I did not know how to forgive. So I tend to teach that forgiveness is like a gift. That's why a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, how do I do this? It's a gift. It has to be actually given to you, right? So I never had a problem with forgiveness. But in that moment, I did. And I remember her mom came down to the church and sat in the pews, the seats, and I walked out. And she walked out behind me and she said, please don't leave my daughter's life. Yeah. And I said, what? And she said, please don't leave my daughter's life. My daughter needs you. And I looked at her and I said, I don't know how y'all do it in the church, but, and I had some words, y'all. I did. I had some words for her. And I went home and I cried because I felt darkness trying to consume me. And I said, God, what is going on? Why can't I shake it? And the Lord said, because you're ashamed. And because you're ashamed, you're holding it in. Because I'm very transparent. He was like, you're holding it in. You got to release it. And if you do not release it, it's going to consume you. And darkness is going to have you. And I was like, everybody knows we're always together. Are you for real? And it took about a week. And then after that, I picked up the phone. I called 3 different people. And I said, I don't want you to get mad. I want you to do nothing. I'm going to tell you something. And I'm telling you because I need to release it. And I did. By the time I got to the 3rd person, I felt the weight lift off of me. And then I would have dreams about her for months. And I said, why do I keep having dreams about her? And the Lord said, you will know in due season. And when I had the last dream, I felt sorry for her. I felt sorry for her. And I realized this is the revelation that came to me. Jesus said on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, I did not know that I needed that revelation for the whole marriage. I had no idea. Because you got to realize he's preaching the gospel. I'm in the church. Women are everywhere, all this stuff. But I wasn't brought up in the church. So I'm seeing women in the church, but that for some reason, they're okay with sleeping with a married man, sleeping with the pastor, all
The
this stuff.
law.
They're okay with hugging you and saying they love you and all this. I'm experiencing this. I'm in it. But I'm not brought up in the church. So I am confused and very naive because in my mind, when you say you have a relationship with God, it looks like my relationship. Okay? Looks like my relationship. And so this was a thing when I got married. The Lord told me two things. When I hear God, I'm taking it to the bank. He said, do not trust him and do not give him your heart. What that means is do not give him your mind. Okay, so those are two things that I did not do. The Lord said, this is an assignment. You will understand when it's over. I didn't understand when I was in it. I told people this the entire time when I was getting the prophecies, everything. This is an assignment. And they would say, that's not how marriage works. And I'm like, no, but God told me this is an assignment. So assignments come to an end.
So I try to be very careful about saying God didn't say something because just because he didn't speak it to me does not mean that he did not speak it. And I realized that, I mean, you can't say that when the Bible clearly told Hosea, like, this was, this is what you're gonna marry this person and this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna give the revelation from this. But number one, you are very quick to call people and to say, hey, this is what's going on, which I think is very important. And so even listening to your story now, it sounds like God did not desire for you to grow up in the church because he didn't want you to be tainted by the,
Definitely.
the
It was the
environment
voice of God
of
that
the
kept
church.
the
Yeah.
voice of God. Because I've been hearing his voice since I was 8. So when it comes to you telling me something, if God told me something else, I'm standing on that. You can call me crazy. You can do all the God backs it up every single time. I'm a living testimony to it, right? And
Right.
so I'm telling you, I would tell people like I I'm on an assignment. I've been on assignment for a lot. Like when I tell you, I'm only telling you a little bit of my story. Like you you would probably be like, girl, I'm just being real. So
It does sound
I
like we
was
need to have prayer
prepared for
meetings.
this
They don't,
assignment.
yeah.
So I was prepared for this assignment, but I understand it now because even in that, I tell people because this is what a lot of married people are taught, and I get it. Keep everything to yourself. What goes on in your marriage, you keep it to yourself. But what you got to understand is a lot of people are not making it. Their life is costing them their life because they're keeping it to themselves. And what I tell people is this: how can you say keep it to yourself, but you could do the most sacred thing in front of everybody, and that's your vows.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
can say your vows in front of all these people, why can't you go to these people? If, in fact, you're supposed to keep it to yourself, your vows are supposed to be told between you, God, and your spouse. But the vows are not told between you, God, and your spouse. Your vows are told between you, God, your spouse, and everybody that's in that room.
I think that brings up such an important fact of the witnesses that you have at your marriage because I think everybody want to invite
There we go.
everybody in their sister mother friend. Y'all got 300 people on the guest list and 265 of those people don't care nothing about your marriage.
Don't care nothing about it. And guess what? Whoever your witness is, you should be able to what? Go to them for counsel.
Right.
This is real, but people are not taught this. They're taught the complete opposite. And so we got a lot of people put on masks and all that kind of stuff, right? So 2022 came to answer your question, right? 2022 came and the Lord said, your assignment is up. So the Lord said, I want you to no longer focus on the funeral home. I want you to focus on your business. Now, this is after he told me, you ain't that wise. So I got the coaches. I started to work out. As I was working out, I began to do exactly what he told me to do. I started working out in March. April, he spoke to me, right? By June, I was sitting having lunch with a multimillionaire.
Wow.
A multimillionaire. By September, I was in a brick and mortar as a brand strategist.
Wow. Wow.
I want to say by May of the next year, I was in a bigger building as a brand strategist. I was doing everything that God told me to do. And it was as if you told me my assignment was up. That's what we're doing. And I'm focusing on that. And I went into my brick and mortar. This is why I tell people when things happen, they happen for a reason. I went into the first brick and mortar, did that. The minute I went in, I got a call from my son who's on the spectrum from autism. During this time, he wasn't saying mommy. He was only talking to me, the little that he was talking to me. And I got a call because I had put him in private school because I was thinking private school would be better for him. Day 2, they called me. They said these words to me: "We cannot help your son." Tears began to roll down my face. I was confused. But this was the thing they did say: "We've already done the research. We've already made the calls. You don't have to figure out the resources. We've already done that for you." I saw God in that, but I was still hurt. When I walked out of that building, my friend, who's a multimillionaire today, called me. And she was like, "What's wrong?" And I broke. And she said, "We're mothers. We got this." And she encouraged me. And I said, "God, it's the reason why you had her call me." Okay. So then I'm in the brick and mortar space. I'm all that. So then so I get the call for the resource that we've been waiting on. I had just got him in daycare. How did that happen? He wasn't in daycare. This was 4 years old for him. All the daycares were full. So I was in my living room. I'm walking back and forth, tears in my eyes. Like, I got to get him around kids because he's not socializing. So I got to get him around kids. And the Lord said, "You remember when you was in college and you used to go to different businesses and you used to motivate their employees? You remember that daycare that you used to go and motivate their staff? I want you to call them." I did not remember it, didn't remember the lady name. So I went and I looked up the daycares. And the one that stood out is the one that I called. I called and I said, "Is your owner there?" And they were like, "No, she's at the other daycare in another city." I said, "What's her name? I need to talk to her." And I got on the phone with her and I said, "I don't know if you remember me." And she said, "Oh yeah, I remember you." And I told her, "Do y'all have openings?" Now, this is in another city that's 30 minutes away from us. "Do y'all have openings?" She said, "Yes. But because of what you did for me, I'm going to charge you for one of your children and the other one can come for free."
Wow.
And I was just like, "God,
Balling.
okay? Like, God, thank you." So I would take them 30 minutes there. Now, this is after we're in the space, all of this. So I'm taking them 30 minutes away, then I'm headed to my store, right? That's in another city. Okay. So then we get the call. So they tell me while we're sitting there, they're telling me, "Okay, we got a program for your son, but your son don't talk. You're going to have to diagnose your son." I'm sitting there with tears in my eyes. I cannot stop the tears. And I said, "I cannot diagnose my son. I'm a person of faith. I believe that God is a healer." Just like that. This is what I'm telling them. Tears in my eyes. And they said, "Okay, we're going to give you until he's 9 years old." Okay. So they said, "Are you going to get him out of the daycare? Because we see he's in another city. The program that we have for him is going to be you got to have him there by 12:30. I said, "No, I'm going to have him at that daycare and I'm going to have him at that one by 12:30. I was on the road for a total of 3 hours every single day.
Wow.
Every single day. I was only working my business for 4 hours a day. I made more money in my business than my business had ever made.
Wow.
I did. I was just like, "God, right? Okay." So but a lot of people were like, "How am I gonna do this?" Like, and they said that's gonna be a lot. And I start hiring people in my business. And sometimes they will ride with me and they'll say, "How do you do this? This is draining." Because my son is defeating autism. And the Bible says faith without works is dead. And it also says train up a child in the way you desire them to go. And so my son is defeating autism. Autism will not have him because I'm the trainer. My job is to train. He will become who I say he will be. That's word.
Girl, amen.
Right? So I'm
Right.
putting in the work and I'm crying. And I tell people, there was a time where I would tell my son, "Go open that door." And he couldn't do it. And I would grab him by the hand. And the Lord said, "I want you to do it 15 times a day." And we dedicated it 15 times a day for months. I would grab him by hand and say, "Open the door," walk him to the door. open the door, close the door, come back to my bed, go open the door. And he would just look at me and I would grab him by the hand. We did it 15 times a day. A day. And one day I said, open the door. He walked to that door and he opened that door. Now, my son, I'm truly proud of my son because we've been on this journey, but then we moved and we ended up going to Athens, Georgia. It was in Athens, Georgia, and I give it up for that school, Athens, Georgia. They removed autism off of his IEP.
Wow.
They said that he was too advanced, and they said to put him in the regular classes
How can they put autism on his IEP when he's not diagnosed with autism?
because he was on the spectrum for it. And everybody, and this was the thing. So, okay, so I got to make sure I don't go too fast, right? So he was on the list to go to the Autism Center in Atlanta. He was on that list for 3 years. 3 years. I was like, okay, he just ain't never gonna be seen. We finally got the date. Okay, we finally got the date. The day before, okay, I'm sitting on my bed, and the Lord says, your husband got the administrative assistant at the funeral home pregnant. Just like that. Yeah, I know. Girl, I know. Listen, I'm trying to, I look. And I was like, no, God, you can't be talking to me right now. This is the day before. This is March 31st, 2024. Okay. And I was like, so I called him. So you got the administrative assistant pregnant? What are you talking about? Da, 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 da. Click. He knew not to come back, right? And I was like, there it is. I can finally do it. Right. So I filed, right? Got my lawyer. Got my lawyer. So the next day, my son is sick with a fever, a cold. He's just sick. I'm playing worship music there. And I'm like, we got this. We're going to see them. They're the ones that's going to diagnose. We walk in there. And my son, that's why I say my son wants to defeat this. We're in there for 2 hours with that psychiatrist. My son does everything that psychiatrist says. That man looks at me and said, I cannot diagnose your son. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is. It's too soon to diagnose him.
Babe, you got stories on top of stories on top of stories. That is incredibly powerful and motivating in this generation and in this time where kids, the level of autism is just elevating, and parents are lost and stuck and they just can't figure out what to do. I was trying to get another lady on. It was actually somebody I grew up with, and two of her kids were autism, and with her latest one, she watched it develop. She said he was playing and everything was fine, and then one day it just snapped. Like she saw him, like, go down. And the patience and the determination and the intentionality that you have to have as a mother. Like, kudos and big ups to every mother who is going through the process of making sure that their child is successful despite what the world wants to diagnose them as. And I think that is incredibly powerful. The time and the attention and attentiveness that you had to put forth in your son, that you had to pour into your son as the steward over his life. But you said, he's going to be whatever I say is going to be. When you get to that level of parenting where you realize that, God placed you to be the steward over your child, and the things that you speak over your child and the things that you pour into your child and how you train your child up is going to be the way that God instructed for it to be. Like, if you just say yes and be obedient to what he's telling you to do as a mother, he's going to open the door and he's going to change every situation according to his will and to his purpose. And so, big ups and kudos definitely on that. I think that is such a powerful story for any mother who is struggling with that diagnosis in this season. And you said that was last year, that was 2024.
That was 2024. And
Wow.
when we got to Athens, God took us there, by the way. That wasn't my choice. I didn't decide it. I was like, you got us here for a reason. And it was for my son. Because I ended up filing the divorce. Everything went through. with the lawyers, and the Spirit of the Lord said, now get out the city. Yeah, the Lord was like, get out the city. And I left my home with furnished and everything for 3 months. And we left and went where my best friend is, in Athens, Georgia. And I was like, we're here for a reason. And it was there in Athens where the teachers, they literally, that was the first time I ever had a successful IEP meeting.
Wow.
I had never had a good IEP meeting at all. And they were like, no, we're going to have to put your son in some regular classes. And it was a Caucasian lady. And she was like, they were like, how are we going to do that? And she said, we're going to create a program for him. And they were like,
Wow.
and they were like, yes, we are not going to be the reason he's set back. He's too advanced. And they created a program for my son where he would be in some regular classes, but like he would be in another class. Like they created it. They did exactly what they said. And when we got done, they said, he's going to be in regular classes from now on. So when we transferred, and we got ready to shift again. And I was like, God, you're shifting us for a reason. And then I'm trying to go as fast as I can.
You're good.
Then my friend, a friend of mine was like, you should really consider co-parenting, like successfully begin to really with their dad and all that kind of stuff. Because their dad didn't want a divorce. So he gave me a hard time doing the divorce, all that kind of stuff. And so our divorce was finalized in April of 2025 this year. And I remember I was like, okay, now, when I left for Athens, and I got to tell this story because I got to show y'all how God works. Like, I cannot make this stuff up. I always have witnesses. And I'm like, God, why I always got witnesses? But now I get it because I feel like I need witnesses. So when I got there, I parked like in my best friend's driveway. Okay. And it's a slight hill. It's not a big one. My car wouldn't start. So I'm in front of her car. Her car is in the garage and I'm parked. My car wouldn't start. And it's like God knew I was just going to go back. So my car wouldn't start. So I had to call mobile mechanics, all of that. And they were like, well, we can't tow your car. Your brakes are down. What you mean you can't tow it? So then the Lord says, I want you to start going live on TikTok. Okay. So I'm trapped in the house. I'm trapped in the house. That was my first time taking an Uber. I had never taken an Uber.
Don't the Lord have the most like ways of just getting your attention and telling you stuff?
To take my son to school, I was like, I've been on an Uber with somebody else, but I've never taken an Uber by myself. And I was like, I'm taking my son to school in an Uber. This is different. Okay. So weeks passed, 6 weeks at that.
And you're Ubering this whole time?
I'm Ubering. I'm trapped in the house. I'm not Ubering. I'm trapped in the house. Okay. And I'm doing lives on TikTok. And the Lord said, you remember in 2024, October, he gave me Cried and Heal. And I was like, I don't know what this is for. And the Lord said, it's for now. And I was like, now. So while I'm doing the lives on TikTok, I'm thinking I'm getting on there to talk about business. No. I was talking to people about healing and forgiveness. That was my first time sharing my story. And the Lord said, now I want you to do it. I want you to do 5 days, a 5-day Cried and Healing experience, virtual. So got people to register for that. I kid you not. I'm spending all this money to try to get my car. Like, what's wrong with my car? All this stuff. Mechanics coming out. Nobody can help me with my car. The day Cried and Heal started, which was 6 weeks later, I was like, my car got him. Let me call this dealership again. And they sent somebody out and they were able to tow my car. It gets to the dealership. The dealership calls me. There's nothing wrong with your car, ma'am. I said, no, my car don't start. It's something wrong with my car. They say, no, there's nothing wrong with your car. Your car started once he got here. No, 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 no. I cannot make this up, y'all. Listen, I was like, no, 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 no. We start this car every day. And so he said, we're gonna hold it for 24 hours. We're gonna try again. The next day, ma'am, you can come get your car. There's nothing wrong with your car. Yes. And I get
We don't question why God do stuff. We just be like, okay, God.
and I'm like, this is crazy. What do you mean? And the whole time God said, I needed you to do Cry and Hill. So then I'm like, okay, so I'll do it in October. The Lord said, no, I need you to do it in June. And I need you to do it face to face. Face to face in June? Like, why? Why? So Cry and Hill was June 6th and 7th. June 5th, I finally agreed to meet with my children's father we did dinner with the kids. My children had not seen him in over a year. That was not my decision. He just wasn't present, right? So that's June 5th. June 5th, we're having a good time. He's like, I'm gonna get my family back. And I'm like, no, no, bro.
Why you had to say that?
I didn't tell him though. In my head, no, bro. Like,
Nah, bro, not today. Not today.
so then we were like, he's going to, I kid you not, y'all. We agreed that he was going to get our children for the summer. Now, even though we were married almost 6 years, he was not present in my children's life. So I used to always say it's like you're preparing them to live a life without you. Because how are we married and they've never been with you by themselves?
Was it the funeral home that took up a lot of the time?
I say that and women, okay?
Okay, part of it, part of it.
Right, part of it. So we agreed. Now I walk in the office of a prophet, so I'm very prophetic, like, and so we agreed that he was gonna get them. But then I kept having a vision of him getting pulled over, going to jail. But in the vision, they couldn't get in contact with me because I changed my number, and they took my children. I had that vision over and over again. I was like, what's going on? So the day he was supposed to get my boys, I'm just calling on Facebook, no response. I said, he ghosted me. The second day, calling, he ghosted me. I can't believe he ghosted me. So then I reached out to his mom, day 3, and she says, he's in jail. He got locked up the same day he was supposed to get my boy.
Wow.
Yeah, he got locked up. And I was like, okay, I don't know what he got going on. So then my mom got them for 2 weeks, my mom and my stepdad. I was getting ready to go get my boys 2 weeks later. Now, during this 2 weeks, I started writing my book. I finally started writing my book.
Mm-hmm.
Started writing my book. And I'm driving to go get my boys. And I hear God say, you need to find their dad today. And God says it 4 times to me. You need to find their dad. So I get to my sister's house. I don't know what's going on, but we got to find their dad today. Like today, God keep telling me. And she said, well, I've been trying to figure out where he at, what jail he at ever since you told us. I said, you have? So we started making calls, nothing. Started doing research, nothing. And then I found a county and they said, oh, he got bailed out, but they was transferring him to another county. I was like, what does he got going on? Now, while we're looking for it, I told my sister, Jemiah, we got to find him today because while we're looking, all I hear is he's deceased. And I don't know why I hear that he's deceased and we're looking for him in jail. Just like that. So then the Spirit of the Lord said, his mom don't have your number. So I text her, please call me. This is Timera. She calls me. When she calls me, she says, my son just woke up. She's screaming, my son just woke up. I said, woke up from what? He was on life support for 10 days. For 10 days. And the day that God told me to find him was the day
From jail, like he was in jail and then
he
he
collapsed in jail.
Mhm.
He collapsed in jail and he was on life support. He woke up. The day God told me to find him was the day that he woke up. And they were like 30 minutes away from where I was. And I went up there and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that he was in a hospital. I just I was like, what the world is going on? Okay. And from there, I would go to the hospital every day for 20 some days. And then he passed July 26th. Yeah. And but Cried and Healed was the first time that I shared the story.
Hmm.
And I told people it was an assignment. And this whole process, I'm like, God, what in the world? You know? And there's so many things I could be grateful for. Because during that process, I was told things by people like, I'm trying to figure out why this happened right after our divorce was finalized and all these things. And I'm a person, I don't really question God on a lot of things. I'm like, God, your will, you got it. And in that moment, I went through some stuff because the women came to the hospital, all of that. And right now, some of those women are they follow me. Some of those women are in some of my classes, all of that. And I realized in that moment, because I would tell people when I was doing a live, I'm healed, no residue. And then I got faced with it. And I was like, wow, I am really healed. And that's when God said, remember when I told you you'll understand when it's all over? And God said, it's too many people in the church that are portraying to be healed, and they are not. And the blind are leading the blind. And I
Hmm.
need my people to be healed so that
He was sending you to. Wow, that is powerful. And condolences, especially to your kids.
thank
Yeah. Um, that is absolutely powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that story with the community. I don't know if you were able to listen to. I am a coach for Kingdom Wives, and these are Kingdom Wives who are in spiritual warfare. And I always say that your marriage is really what God says it is. Sometimes God will tell you to stay, and sometimes God will tell you to leave. You do whatever it is that God is telling for you to do. And sometimes He will tell you you need to go to war against the enemy that's trying to take over your marriage and try to take over your household. And so I love that everything that God is calling for you to do, He has given you such a in-depth background or such a connection with Him in the background to prolong or for further the things that He's calling for you to do in the season and in the seasons past. That's so powerful as a foundation to understanding not just business, but ministry, marriage, family, finances, all of these things, connections, just being able to walk through God's plans, like letting Him lead you in those plans. He goes before you to make cricket paths straight. You said He, went before you and opened up the doors for your daycare and opened up the doors for your children and autism. And He spoke to you about, connecting with your husband to make sure that you were able to have that closure. The biggest thing with me is I don't want to go before the Lord and say that I allowed my bitterness or my grief to keep me from being the best wife that I was supposed to be, the best mother that I was supposed to be, the best leader that I was supposed to be. Because there are a lot of times where you are going to be called to lead the people who are stabbing you in the back or who have stabbed you in the back. And you got to be able to be healed enough to show up in the aspect that God is calling for you to show up so that you can do the work that He's calling for you to do. And so I love your background or your history with God that led you in all of these areas. I definitely love your ability to hear what God is speaking because people will come to you and tell you that it's something different. Baby, you lying. And it was so funny, girl. You said your husband said I found my wife, and you was like, who?
For real, like, yeah.
Girl, that was so funny. That had me cracking up. But such a powerful testimony and such a powerful story that even has led you into your business. We've talked so much about your personal life, and I absolutely love every moment of it. I feel like we can just keep going and going and going. But for the sake of just, making sure that I am respectful of your time, I want you to just talk a little bit about your business. So I saw on your website you have this thing called Decade of Coaches. What is that?
All right, so the decade of the coaches, God gave me revelation going into 2020, in 2019, that this was the decade that coaches were going to become multiple six-figure writers, millionaires, all of that. And so the decade of the coaches is where I coach entrepreneurs as well as coaches, um, every every other Monday night. The objective of that is to get you on a path where you're actually running your business like a business owner and not a self-employed individual, because those are two different things. And then from there, you can decide whether or not I'm your coach. Because I don't take from people. That's not my job. I'm not everybody's coach. But the decade of the coaches at a small fee allows you to see whether or not I am your coach. And it allows you to also implement strategy and execute to get some results in your business as well.
Perfect. And then I also, that's actually very, you said you do this every other Monday.
Yeah, first and third Monday nights at 9 p.m.
Okay. And what is the 8 layers of abundance?
8 layers of abundance. So when it comes to abundance, a lot of people think they know, but they don't know, right? So a lot of people are like, I want the money, and all that. Money is spiritual, and we need to really understand that it's spiritual. But we tend to pray for things that we already have. So I tell people, stop running your mouth, okay? Stop running your mouth, because that's all prayer is, running your mouth to God. That's it. What you're not saying is the key. Okay. So when you pray and you say, God, bless me with a house, what you're really saying is, God, put me in alignment where I follow your steps of getting my credit fixed, start saving more, invest. This is what you're really saying, but you don't realize you're saying it.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the 8 layers of abundance, it's tapping into stewardship in the different 8 paths of your life. Okay. Because number 8 is not just new beginnings, it's also abundance. So
Right.
there are 8 aspects of your life where you need to practice stewardship. So how you eat, all of that. Like, I no longer eat meat. I stopped eating meat July 20th of last year. I don't eat fish. I don't eat none of that. And my thing is, I need to steward over my body. I can't keep asking God for a long, healthy life, but I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So during those 8 layers of abundance, I coach you and show you, okay, you want the money to flow to you, but you got to be attracted. You got to be attractive to it. You got to be attractive to abundance with your mind, your physical, everything. And a lot of people really need to understand that. So when it comes to business, a lot of people hustle. Okay. I learned a long time ago, that's not what makes your business successful. You don't have to hustle. You don't have to do all, you do it with ease and grace and just calmness and all those things by working on yourself. You work on yourself, your business will take care of itself. That's how it's supposed to be. But what happens is people work on their business and they don't work on themselves. And so they're like, I'm doing all of this work, but I'm not getting nothing. Who told you that's what produces? It says faith without works is dead. Did you ever ask what kind of work?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. God has dealt with me a lot on the things that I was eating. And you can definitely tell, like, he cares about those things. And so I remember a couple of years back where I really began to shift my focus on not just speak. I feel like when you said running your mouth, I think that I don't want anybody. So for me, I don't. Putting that in context for me, it is I used to pray for things and not understand what I was praying for.
Yeah.
Right? There's a deeper revelation to what you're praying for. And so I've always prayed, like, Lord, open up a door for us to be better stewards over our finances, or to help our finances increase, like, teach us those things that we need to be taught. And so I remember one day I was praying, you pray over your food, like, Lord, bless this food, let it be nourished, just talk about it, let it cause no harm. And I looked down at my food and I was like, huh.
Mm.
Like, baby, how you gonna ask God to let this food be nourishing to your body and you see, like, exactly what's on this plate? I think eating is such a hard thing in the church. And I'm gonna tell you, okay, we've had these conversations, we've been talking for however long. And so for anybody who hasn't necessarily heard your story, they'll probably think that you're cocky and arrogant. But here's what I realized. God has given you so much confidence in his voice that you're just confident in who it is that God has called for you to be in the areas that he called for you to show up in. And you are very humble in heart because you trust in his word and you trust where he's guiding you, where he's taking you. And the areas and the places that he's calling for you to show up from, you can't show up timid and shy. You got to show up with some authority and knowing who you are in God. And so I thank God for that. And so we talked about your business, we talked about your personal life. I love how your personal life shows up in your business and you're like, you don't have to hustle. You don't have to do all of these things. I have confidence in who God is. I know who he's calling for us to show up as and what he's calling for us to show up to do. What is the thing that you see a lot of business owners and coaches struggling with as far as like increasing their business, increasing their revenue, and making sure that they're staying in tune with who it is that God has called for them to be?
Lack of consistency. I think that a lot of people get bored and they think boredom means switch it up. Boredom actually means you're tapping into mastery. Mastery produces fortune. So if you master a thing, things will be added to you. What happens is I'm just repeating the same thing over and over again. This People are gonna be like, no, actually, you're stepping into mastery. And we're gifted people. And because we're gifted people, we're like, okay, I'm tired of doing this. Let me go do that. But when you start getting bored, do not leave that area. That is where your fortune is. Your fortune is getting ready to come to you. But a lot of entrepreneurs that start off or don't have that background, once they get bored, they jump to something else. And now they have to get that one stirred up and get that one to mastery. But then they get bored, they jump to something else before the fortune can actually come.
Yeah, I see that a lot actually. That is actually really when you're in the coaching community, you see coaches do that a lot. They want to rebrand themselves and redo this and redo that. And I think I'm just gonna say for me, even in the area of coaching that God has called me to, when I didn't see that move, I kind of went to him and was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do here? And he would tell me, hey, I need you to pause here. I need you to do this. But he never told me to switch up what I was doing. You just tell me, to navigate how to navigate my way through it. So that is actually really true. But like, why these people keep rebranding themselves, girl? Who you
Because
who
they get
you
bored.
rebranding yourself
Yeah.
for? Yeah. So I love that. Is there anything? Listen, your testimony has been so powerful
Oh, glory to
and
God.
encouraging. And so, is there anything else that you want to share with the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss community, as far
I
as
will
personal
say this.
life,
So when I say run your mouth, I spend more time in silence
listening?
and watch God speak.
Hmm.
That's what I mean when I say it. Because I get what you're saying, because I don't have time to coach on it. But spend more time being silent, quick to listen, slow to speak.
Hmm.
Use that in your prayer life and watch what God does. So I'm one, even in prayer, we do 365 days of prayer. We pray every single morning. Don't skip it. I believe in starting the day, touching and agreeing in prayer. But I also believe in just sitting still in silence. God, what is it that you want? Because I can tell you all day what I want, but God, what is it that you want? That's what I need to know. I need to know what you want.
Yeah, very important.
That's what has gotten me through my silence, not me running my mouth, asking him this, that, this. It's being humble enough to be silent and be still to hear him.
I think in prayer it's so important to be led by Holy Spirit because I've gone in prayer and started praying, and God was like, "Are you done?"
Right. Yes.
He'd be like, "You're not listening." Like, and it's just a matter of just sitting still and listening to what He's instructing to do. And I think I got that from one of my mentors. She said, "Every day you can get a word of God from God. You can get a scripture, you can get instruction, you can get all of these things." And so, like I said, Holy Spirit always snatch my pearls a little bit. I'd be like, "Oh, okay." So, anything else that you want to share as far as tips of business or how we can reach you? Any programs you got coming up?
Okay, so one of the things that I do help coaches, entrepreneurs, I help them get to multiple six figures. And I literally help them do that. So I provide many different resources. I do have 7 more opportunities available for exclusive coaching. That's where I'll actually coach you one-on-one between 12 months and 24 months. And that's for anyone that wants to actually get to that multiple 6-figure mark. I can help them with that. Now, I'm led by God with everything. So I go into prayer, even in business, right?
Mhm.
I do that. That's what I do. The Decade of the Coaches is just $99 a month. And it's a small investment, but it gets you in that space that you need to be in to get to where you're trying to go. So I provide that. And then also I have what is called Heal and Rise that I do every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. on Zoom, where I help people in the process of healing and walking in their forgiveness. And you can
Is
visit
that
my
Eastern
website.
Standard?
Go ahead.
Is that Eastern Standard?
Yeah, Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And you can visit my website at TimeraLaChae.com or increasedglobal.net. And yeah, we pray every single morning, 365 days. If you want to join us, that's at 7:15 a.m. Eastern Time.
Oh, you mean like you get on lives and
Yeah,
pray every
on
morning?
Zoom. No, this is a platform where everybody prays, or you can
Okay.
just get on and listen. I believe in I can go on TikTok and pray and all of that, but I believe come together, get over your shyness, because there's something that God wants to do in your life. So if you do it in prayer, it's going to help you with everything else in your life. If you can pray with some people and to open up your mouth, you may start off shy, but as you continue to do it, you're going to get better. And then in your business, in your life, you're going to be able to soar because you're getting over your fear in an intimate space, such as prayer.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing all that information.
No problem.
Again, we
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on. This has been so amazing. I know that it is going to bless our Kingdom Life community. So at this moment, we're going to go ahead and end this podcast. And I'm just going to say thank you guys for listening. And make sure that you reach out to Samira, not just for her powerful podcast, but for what she can also do for your business. All right. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed the episode. Make sure that you catch us every week here on the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast, where we are bringing you new episodes, new content, new information, new empowerment, new strategies, and new strength. Until then, I'll catch you next time.